Bienvenidas to Merendiando, part of Radio Luna Theater. Today we are chatting with Misset Parata. She's an Afro Venezuelan musician, performer, and dancer. Also, she is part of the ensemble of Cacao, a Venezuelan Lament, the show that is opening tomorrow at the Rutas Festival. And to help me co-host this interview, we have a Venezuelan-born Dora Award-winning performer, writer, facilitator, also our first ever guest in this podcast, and one of my favorite humans in the whole world, Augusto Bitter.
Woo! Gracias, Monica. I'm so excited to be back. I'm so excited to be here, and I'm so excited to talk to Misset. I love her. I love you. I love you all. I met Misset, I think, in the very first Rutas I ever went to, so this is a beautiful full circle moment, and I've been a part of and been following Cacao for a really long time because it's been happening for a really long time. So I'm so excited to be here. Let's get started.
We're here with the one and only Misset Parata. This is your second time coming back to the podcast because we had you part of the Caminos Festival like 3 years ago almost now. Yeah,
that's correct. You know what? And I forgot about that until I remember through the question that you sent me. I was like, oh my God, it's true. We did Caminos.
Yeah, and we had you with a group, so now we have you all for ourselves.
Oh my God.
Me and Augusto are like,
yes. Oh, I feel like a star.
Yes, you are a star. I was saying that we met at the first Rutas, I think, too. So it's like a full circle love meeting again.
It is. It's true. In different areas.
Yeah.
Percussion, and acting
yes.
and percussion. So that's great. That's true.
This episode comes out on Wednesday 21st, which is also Augusto's birthday. Yay! And the next day is the finally opening of Cacao. Yes. Like 10 years in the making.
Oh my God, 10 more. It's actually like 13 years since Victoria came out with the idea. And it's so incredible to think about the long journey. And that because COVID, like many of us, have to postpone, so many events. Cacao was going to happen. And then we thought last year, and then we didn't know, but finally.
And we want to know what has been your journey with this project. Like, how did you get involved, and how much it has changed since you've been in it until tomorrow opening night?
Whoa, you know what you're talking about, and I feel like I'm talking. It's like a child that it's almost gonna be 13, a teenager.
Pubertad.
Well, I remember when Victoria told me about the idea. We were part of Mata Dance, and one day she called me. She was in Oakland, San Francisco, and she's like, I have this idea that I want to do this. It's about cocoa farmers in Venezuela and this and that. And she had it like clearly that I was going to be Jusmelda, and she had the name. She had it already. And that Irma was going to be Milena, because we were dancing in Mata Dance. And it was like, okay. And then little by little, like we continue doing Mata Dance, she started like working on the project. And it was until like finally 2018 that we sat with Augusto, who was going to be part of the project too. And we had the first, I was in Venezuela. Sorry, let me go back. I was in Venezuela. I went for 5 years, and we went back in 2013, and we started meeting. She started going to the first hacienda in Venezuela, 2013.
Wow.
9 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah. And we went to Belen's house. She just had passed away a year before, the reign of the Kiki Plus. And we went to her house. We went to the hacienda. And she brought the first script in January 2018. And we read it with IT, who is the director of dance. And then we came back to Toronto. She came back. I came back after. And we sat with Augusto, who was going to be Centeno, Irma, and myself. And we read that chunk that it was for the three of us. And we're like, oh my God, like, this is going to happen.
It's real.
It's real. Yeah. And we connected. Like, it was that day, it was amazing. It was like, this is the team. This is going to be Centeno.
Yeah.
And that from that day, it was like right on. She's like, she started like, I guess she has been working, but everything was like, yeah, we're gonna present it for 2020. That was the idea, 2020.
Yeah, I think what I loved about the most of that is trying to figure out for us, also Irma, who isn't Venezolana, like the three of us really bonding and joking and coming up with all these ideas or specific jokes that Venezolanos will get, but then kind of bringing Irma into that world was so fun for me on that day. I remember it was such a
Yeah.
beautiful day, and Cacao really talks a lot about that, about the preservation of traditions and about what it means to be an immigrant and what you take and what you leave behind and how you change. And for you, Miset, what is a tradition that you personally have preserved or want to preserve coming from somewhere else and being somewhere else?
You know what? I think Cacao, I talk about it when I went back to Venezuela. I was gonna go for 1 year and I stayed 5 because of that, because of tradition. Getting
Hmm.
in touch with I started, like, I've been all, like, my family, we have tradition and the music is always, we have been involved. But having the opportunity to connect again, because I started percussion, I started in 2002. I came to Canada. I thought I was going to be here for 1 year, 6 months, a year, and then I stay in Canada. And I didn't have any teacher because back then we didn't have WhatsApp. Back then we didn't have these videos, this technology didn't have the advance. We had like the big block of phones. And going back to Venezuela, I reconnected with that tradition, but deeply. And it wasn't just like the traditional joropo. It was, I knew the tambores because I grew up in Barlovento and we danced at the school, but like understanding deeply, even the history of what is drumming, the Africans, the native, and that beautiful mix of native with the African music and how it is in ourselves and how we connect with also Colombia,
Hmm.
with Brazil, with so many countries where the whole colonization happened. But tradition is something that I have been appreciating even more because it tells about my story, my history of my ancestors, you know, either native, either African, either European. But every time it's like it makes me more rooted to myself or into who I am and where I come from. And that part of where I come from, me, I'm able to bring it here. And I think to even it's like when we have a garden and we plant a new seed, and this beautiful plant is gonna be part of this beautiful garden. And I think my tradition, what I have learned and what I will continue learning, is very important for me because it's part of who I am and what I can share with Toronto, with Canada, or wherever I go.
Hmm.
That's pretty
Hmm.
beautiful. I think this is a good point because I know you really wanted to ask this
Hmm.
question because you might have will be going back to
Hmm.
Venezuela.
Hmm.
Yeah, me said I might be going back to Venezuela for the first time in 12 years next
Oh
year.
my
I'm
God, that's
I'm
amazing.
planning,
Yes.
yeah, and I haven't been there, as an adult. And there's a lot of people that are gone that I was gonna go before. I was gonna again, like Cacao, like I was gonna go in May 2020. That got canceled, say goodbye to some people, and then we didn't get to say goodbye, which is a really common immigration story and experience. And it's every day you feel a little bit of that. But in a previous interview, you did mention that you had gone back to Venezuela after 11 years, and how you mentioned that music and percussion and what you just spoke about was a thing that helped you connect again. So I'm curious, why music? Why do you think music led you there? Why do you think music, or how does music have that power?
Um, I have a teacher, and it's true, I believe. He said that we all are percussionists
Hmm.
because our biggest instrument and the most important, the heart, is
Hmm.
always beating and is
Ah.
always making a sound since you are born. So he says we're all percussionists, that is always. And it's very interesting when you are excited when you have this moment that the heart goes like this, and we don't connect that, and it's making a sound, and
Mm-hmm.
it's so big that we can even feel it outside. For me, I think it's in my family, it's in the blood, and we always in Venezuela, same Mexico,
Yeah.
there is always a radio on
Yeah.
from first time in the morning.
Yeah.
Even the people who selling fruits on the street, you hear them singing, or the voice has like some music.
Yeah.
It's something that
Or
I don't
anything's a
know.
drum, the Tío Rico, el heladero, like they drum on that cooler, like
They do click, 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 and you
yeah.
as a kid, you recognize that.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
my mom always listening to music. I used to go. My mom is from Cúpira, Barlovento, which is a part of the Cocoa regions, and they will play Joropo Tuyero,
Mm.
which is very interesting because my mom is at the end of the part of where there are a lot of black slaves were brought to. But my mom is from a town that is a lot of indigenous moved from the west, from the east to west. So my mom's town is a lot of indigenous looking people,
Mm.
not a lot of black. So, but then they started mixing.
Of course.
So Joropo Tuyero was always played. And since I was little, I will go with my aunt, with my mom, to see them, watch them dancing Joropo Tuyero live music. So music has always been in my family. Even my dad was white, green eyes, but he loved joropo. And he was a bus driver. He was a truck driver, and he always had music. He didn't know how to dance, but he always had music. And joropo Venezuelan music. He was very traditionalist. He
Yeah.
was very like hardcore with the music. So it's always been in my family, and we love it. Like there is a day that we don't have music in the house, even in the radio. There is always the radio is always on. It's part of us.
I know what you mean. I grew up with kids, who didn't in Venezuela who were, catiritos, blonde, blue-eyed, they were like Italian, you know what I mean? But we would dance tambor in recreo. We would all know that and we would do that. And even if they didn't have those roots, it was part of that culture that brought us together. And even if maybe they didn't listen to it at home like you or I did, like you couldn't ignore it. It was part of the fabric of that place. Totally.
Yeah. And my mom coming from Barlovento, there is always tambor somehow.
Mm-hmm.
But then when one famous singer, El Puma,
Mm-hmm.
he got married, he invited this group Tambor Urbano, who was the first group that is like a projection group. They are not traditionalists. We didn't know that until now, but he invited them to come to Miami. And when they play, and they play also in a Miss Venezuela, that's when the tambor came out to be public.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Oh.
because of El Puma. And he
Wow.
brought this group to Miami and then to Miss Venezuela.
The world.
Because it has a connotation of race
Of
and
course.
colonization,
Of
like it has a
course.
lot of deep things underneath.
Mm-hmm.
That the tambor was for the people on the town, on the beach,
Mm-hmm.
like we say, no people with money or like
Yeah.
accessibility. Yeah, it comes from the the people from the town who move from to Caracas to find a job, and they will bring their tradition, and they will do it like very small, because when you were colonized, when the Africans were colonized, they couldn't celebrate in a big way.
Of course.
They
Mm.
had the moment of celebration very small,
And it was secret. Yeah.
and it was secret. And that's why San Juan comes also, because they could celebrate once a year.
Mm-hmm.
In the show, you're bringing a celebration of San Juan, right?
We have a San Juan that it was made in Venezuela, and we want to bring that representation because Victoria has that memory about her going to San Juan with her family, to the San
Mm.
Juanes in Caracas. For me personally, what it brought me back to I was dancing, I was doing many things, but I particularly drumming was that beating of the heart. My dad has passed away 2001, and I was at a wedding, and that's when my teacher said the heart is the biggest drum that we have.
Mm.
I went to the wedding because it was my best friend. I didn't want to be anywhere because my dad had just passed away a couple months ago. And I remember I felt like a dead person. I didn't have any energy. I was really sad. I also wanted to die. And I remember she brought Tambor, a live group. They live on Barlovento. They moved from Caracas to Barlovento. And she brought this group. And I remember standing there and seeing people dancing and going crazy. But it was the drum who I started feeling in my heart, tutum, and the sounds. Like I would close my eyes, and I remember that made me feel that I was alive.
Mm.
I was like, shit, I'm not dead. Like I'm alive. And it was the drums. And that's when I decided I wanted to study and learn how to place the
Mm-hmm.
tambores because of that connection. I will never forget that moment. Everybody, me, I'm a person that I'm always jumping and dancing and I'm sociable. But that moment I was like, I don't want to talk. I don't want to
Mm-hmm.
dance. I don't want to like, but just hearing the drum, it was such a connection. And it was like, I said, thank you, God. I think that was a moment
Mm.
of light in my life back again.
Wow.
And that's why I went into drumming. And then life, we separated for 11 years until I
Mm-hmm.
went back in 2013 after 11 years. Yeah.
Wow.
That's beautiful.
And I love that there's this poetic memory with the idea of your heartbeat and that being a drum, but it has a concrete biological, like that heart is pumping your blood, is literally keeping you alive.
Yep. Yep.
It's beautiful. That's such a
It is.
gorgeous.
And you're saying it like in a poetic way too.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's beautiful. It's very
So talking about teachings and tradition, we know that when you were in Venezuela, you had the opportunity to learn from other musicians. And I want to know, and I think you kind of give us like little answers, well, for this question already, but like why it's so important to you to share the knowledge of music and especially Afro Venezuelan music.
you know what? One thing that when that tambor urbano came out and we saw on the big screen, we thought that it was like the real traditional music. And all started dancing to the way we thought we could dance it, the way they play it. But nowadays we have understood that there is different way of showing music. There is traditional, there is projection, because one thing is when you put on a stage.
Mm.
So what I learned when I went back, and that was something that I did personally. I think I love investigating. When I started to understand that a lot of people had come from the town to move to Caracas to find a job that they could survive because the farming wasn't giving them enough money to survive, they will bring the music, and a lot of people will stay in the town. So people will go back and forth. Some people never went back to their towns. They connected somehow in another ways. I found out that a lot of my teachers in Caracas have family that migrated to Caracas, and they will bring their music. So my teachers will learn from their family, or and also some of them will go back to their town with their family. So they will tell us a story about, oh, this guy who played the kumaco this way. He will place the hand this way and the sound, ta 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 ta. And this other guy or this woman will sing this way. But what happened is that through the time they realized that because of preservation, because it's your music, because you inheritage that, your
Mhm.
ancestor, they will keep the music, they will keep the knowledge. And because they were jealous, or like the young people would come and try to do something with it, that it wasn't like why they learned to play. And they would teach it to certain people. They were very jealous about it. But the teachers realized that we were losing the information. And that didn't happen just in Venezuela.
Mm-hmm.
That happened also Colombia, that happened also Mexico, like all the places that we were colonized
Mm.
also, because yeah, you couldn't play your music whenever you wanted to. And so that also protection of the knowledge that you have, it was hurting, and we were losing a lot of information, and a lot of information that could be transferred, you
Mm-hmm.
know. There is evolution in music and there is evolution in life, but somebody taught me something, and it's life itself. That you have the base well planted, you can build anything from there up, but you need to have the base. And a lot of that base was getting lost
Right.
because they will die and they will keep the information because they're like, this is precious, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of teachers were like, well, we want to teach you what I learned. And if you want to do, you want to change something, just be conscious about it.
Mm-hmm.
But this is what I learned from this person, and this person learned from that person.
Right.
So I would go to the towns. I went to as many towns as I could. And even when I went, the first 2 years, they didn't like you when you were recording them
Mm.
because of that preservation. It took me a while. Some people will block you. Or if they're singing, they're like, if you are with your camera, they're like, no, 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 we're in our moment. You know,
Mm-hmm.
this is for us. But then when they started seeing you, that you're respecting the tradition, that you are somebody that you want to learn, you want to like show them what they know in a good way, they start to open up. And I remember years later, one day I was just dancing, and one person from this town, from Corepe, he's like, so what is your camera? And I'm like, yeah, how come you're not recording? And it took me by surprise. Like, I'm like, he knows who I am. Like, he sends me years with my camera, you know? And
Yeah.
that's why I couldn't leave. Well, because of also the situation that was happening in Venezuela back then. That's why I couldn't leave, because I didn't want to leave, because it's so much information that you need to learn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because like Colombia, Mexico is so extensive, the traditional music, that it takes years.
A lifetime.
Yeah, it's a lifetime learning. And so that's why for me tradition has been very important, because I was able even to meet a couple of elders, because a lot of them have passed away, that still were like they learned from like somebody. We're talking about maybe almost 100 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
a person who also lived a long life and were able to pass on the tradition. So that's why my teachers were like, we have to teach, we're going to lose this, we have to pass it on. And that's why me coming back to Canada, I was like, in our music, we don't know it everywhere. Afro Colombia is now very well known, Afro Brazilian music. But Afro Venezuela, no, a lot of people don't know the Afro Venezuelan music. It's very complex, actually,
Mm-hmm.
to play it and learn it. But you can do it. Like anybody can learn it if you want to, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So that's why tradition is very important.
And coming to Canada, how was the start of your artistic journey in this country? What did you bring from all those experiences learning in Venezuela, and how did you apply that? Or is there any advice you can give of what you learned in that process to newcomer artists, newcomer immigrants who want to find those communities and want to find ways to stay connected to their cultures while being here?
You know what? I gotta praise the technology,
Mm-hmm.
because back when I came, I came in 2002. Like I said, technology wasn't that accessible. It was meeting people. I think it was connecting. I'm a person that I'm always chatting. I went to Zoe for a couple of years for looking the groups that I could connect with who I was, what I had learned from Venezuela, and who I was as a human being, with my sexuality, trying to be part of a community. I remember that I found Zoe,
Mm-hmm.
and through Zoe, which was an amazing place, I met
Is
people
still
that
there.
were artists.
It
Huh?
is. It
Yeah, it's
is.
still
It
there.
is
Yeah,
still, yeah, they have changed the
of
dynamics.
course.
I mean, sorry, maybe I'm talking about the dynamics we had.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of the immigrants were artists. And I
Wow.
remember going to Church Street, people who were doing drag shows will start at Soy and then we'll go to church. And when it was played, because we didn't have many Latinos, Convento Rico,
Yes.
remember? And I
Yes.
remember my first participation was with one of my friends from Soy. He's like, oh, I'm gonna go into the contest to be Mr. Convento Rico. So he was gonna dance, and he's like, oh, Mitze, but you were a dancer. And I'm like, let's put a choreography together. So he invited other friends, and we did our first show at Convento Rico, his backup dancers, and he actually ended up winning.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, Diego from Costa Rica. Beautiful guy, handsome, but really nice, very sweet. So that was my first show. And I was like, well, I've never done something like this.
Mm.
And it was really beautiful. And after that, also it connected me with Victoria Mata. Because then somebody said, hey, Miss said, they will tell us about the event. We have this Venezuelan girl who is going to do Máscara, de Diablos de Yare. And I'm like this, I'm like, Venezuela, Diablos de Yare, I want to know who she is. But she really know how to make Venezuelan Yare because I'm protective,
Of
see?
course. You learned
Like,
that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, who is this chick? And that's how I met Victoria Mata. And then a couple months later, she's like, oh, I have this group from university, blah, blah, if you want to come and dance. And I'm like, oh my God, I haven't danced in so long. And she's like, no worry, this is something that we're creating. It's not like, it's very feminist. And we started like with these ideas of a collective. And that's when I joined Mata Dance. And from there, I was with Mata Dance until I went to Venezuela.
Right.
And when I came back, Mata Dance was no longer active. I ended up doing Caminos with Paula Carreño.
Right.
And I did a little show when we met with Baubata. They invited me. Yeah. So that's soy. Soy was my having that place.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I would tell the kids or the young generation that now that we have the media, look it up, don't feel afraid. And if you feel shy, try on. And if you have somebody you need a hand or you need somebody to go with you, ask someone. You never know. And these places are for, let's say they are community. A lot of them, they really are community. And they're wonderful places to connect with people. So look it up. Even through us right now, if you have any question, you want to connect, we are here. And that's the way, being open. Like,
Yes.
we are here and that we can connect. And there is always a way.
Yeah. So it was also a big part for me.
See?
Yeah.
And I started at Buddies, and then Buddies connected me to Soy, and I was in Soy for 4 years.
Also, that was probably after I left because they kicked me out because of my age.
Oh,
I'm like,
The Fruit Loop stage at Pride, because I remember a lot of people, a lot of immigrants, their first performing space was the Fruit Loop stage.
Fruit Loop?
So yeah.
We did Mata Dance. We did it 10 years. We did a show for Soy at a club in downtown, and I was Mata Dance, and they invited me because they're like, Misset, you have to do the 10-year celebration. And I remember Fruit Loops, and Victoria and I, we did a solo, a duet for Fruit Loops for Baris and Batime in 2008.
That's because that's a stage, and if anybody who's listening is like a new immigrant who's an artist, there's a lot of stages here who you don't need to fit a certain thing or a certain way. It's really, they're quite open to art is art, and whatever is your expression, do it. And that was really important when you're just starting.
No, and even you're finding yourself, because as an immigrant, you're coming into a different culture. I didn't speak any English. So when you don't speak, you don't understand the culture. And you're mixing and meeting so many people, and you are like, can I show my art? Would it be received? Is it okay? So many things that go through your mind. Would people understand me? I don't know. Some people, they go and they do it, but others, they feel like, even because they're finding themselves, they're like, oh, it's very vulnerable to go on a stage too, to show part of who you are or what you have created.
Yeah, it's so important to find a place that you can, especially as an immigrant coming here, an intersectional space where you can be all the parts of yourself and feel safer maybe than you did where you're coming from, and be able to explore that. To explore your fullness in that space is huge. And like you said, technology, if you just look up queer immigrants, queer POC, you'll find 5 different, but now it's just more accessible, like you're saying.
Back then, like you said, it was a flyer.
Yes.
I don't remember how I ended up at Soy, I don't know if it was from the 519 or from Ola or somebody that mentioned it.
Hola.
Yeah.
Ola, remember?
Oh,
Hola. Yes,
Like, but I
hola.
remember that in that building, the soy was where the TD is on Church, right on Church on Wellesley. That was the first
Mm-hmm.
office. And I would go there years later. I would go for ESL classes from work. And I remember getting in that building. I'm like, what am I getting to? And it felt like an office. I'm like, is this an office?
Mm-hmm.
What am I going to, But it was flyers. And remember that we put like flyers on the walls,
yeah.
soy or Fruit
Mm-hmm.
Loops when there was like the stuff for Pride. But it
Mhm.
was all old
Mm-hmm.
school. Yeah, no technology,
Yeah.
just the flyers.
But it was meant to be. You were meant to find that flower, a flower flyer.
Exactly. We were meant to, and through people then, word
Of
of mouth,
course.
that it's been the most from million years ago.
Yeah. And what's beautiful, is that Victoria Mata, and I think the three of us can say this, is familia
It is.
now,
Yes.
and that's how started so many years ago, but from some chance encounter or someone's like, ay, mira, conozco una venezolana, deberías conocer, like that word of mouth is huge and it's still so valuable.
It is. It is.
From soy to
So,
opening night.
Ooh,
Yeah.
mhm,
So we want to
ooh.
ask you because Rutas was born out of the desire to bring art from across the Americas to Toronto to encounter new perspectives, voices, and ideas, and to engage in conversations about arts and human rights. We want to know what conversations or engagement do you hope Cacao will bring to our audiences?
I think Cacao will bring a lot of conversations because even us as an artist, we're always talking about something. And when you are like me, that I was recently in Venezuela and here in Toronto, that you are promoting, as soon as you give the card or you talk about it, people are like, what is it about? Because you say a show. A show. What kind of show? And then that just that moment, you say, oh, it's about cocoa or cacao, and they're like, what you made the chocolate, but then right away it's like it has a story.
Mhm.
You're gonna see dance, you're gonna see performance, visual singing, but it talks about cocoa farmers from Venezuela. So right away, that's what I usually say that it has a story. It's a personal story and it's also fiction, but you're gonna get to know a lot of information in history about the cocoa farmers.
mhm.
And I think that's why for Victoria, and I said this, I heard that it's been shows made in Venezuela about cacao, about cocoa. I wasn't able to see them because I was here. However, what Victoria is doing, I haven't seen nothing like that. Because going to the haciendas, going to the conucos, interviewing people, understanding their life. What is it? How do you get this chocolate? Where does it come from? And like it has a lot of
Research.
layers. I think a lot of people, what I hope that is they grab something that they might go on the cell phone or on the computer or ask somebody. I think Cacao is gonna do that. And a lot of immigrants, I think, are gonna connect with the story, regardless that you don't have to be Venezuelans, because also talks about that, about things that are happening, not just in Latin America in general, about immigration and how certain things that happen that can affect a country,
Hmm.
economically, politically. So I think Cacao is going to touch many people in many ways.
And I think what's beautiful about Rutas and what's beautiful about Cacao really is Venezuela is such a major exporter of like part of that conversation is in the piece that I know of, and I love that there is this, even if someone like you're saying isn't from Venezuela or isn't Latine or whatever they are, they're bringing that story of that cacao farmer to a global impact. Like you should care about this person's history and ancestry and traditions because you maybe ate a piece of chocolate
Mm.
when you were 8 that maybe came from that person's farm and you didn't know it. You know what I mean? And that's beautiful, this like small country in Latin America having this global impact and those connections are so important to think about and consider. Really, beautiful.
It's amazing when you say, "Oh, the best chocolate." I don't want to say a specific brand, but Snickers, and you're like, "Mm." Now that you know, you're like,
Mhm.
yes, it's delicious, but it's not the best.
Yes,
And probably
exactly.
they might have used cacao, cocoa from Mexico,
Yeah.
Venezuela, Colombia. You know what I mean? And we
Yeah.
don't know it.
Yeah. But speaking of, leaving something with these audiences, every episode of Merendiando, we, Monica, like to ask our current guest to pose a question to the next guest so that the conversation keeps going across practices and across borders. And so the question that we have for you comes from Nina Vogel from Peter and the Wolf.
Sure.
And Nina's question is, anima in Latin means the breath of life, or it could also be translated as the soul. So very close to alma, probably has the same roots there. And Nina's question is, how do you, Miset, share your anima with your audience?
I think when you do something, do it truly and honestly. When it comes from the heart, I let my light come out. I let my light shine. I try to be as honest as I can. I try to be myself and connect. Like I get really naked
Mm.
when I'm doing something that I love. It's like here I am. I'm all yours. And I
Take it or
open
leave
my
it.
soul, mi alma, my spirit. I think it's a moment that you cannot have your guards up.
Mhm.
You
Mhm.
cannot close yourself, and you gotta be you. I'm me. I'm
Mhm.
myself. Even though if like I'm gonna be Chusmelda, and what can the best of me said, even not the best, even me said, because I have my light, I have my dark.
Mhm.
I have my good and I have my not so good of me. How can that connect and go through Jusmelda and that
Mhm.
people can receive. And even when I dance, even when I play, I try to be myself. That's something that I learned in life. You gotta be you and do it with love. I do it with love and I let that comes out, shine through me. Yeah, through my heart, through my whole being.
And we see it. We feel it. I've been around you. I've seen you perform. I know that
Thank
you do
you.
that, Miset. It's
Oh.
Thank
beautiful.
you.
And what would you like to ask to our next guest, who will be another artist in the Rutas Festival?
I think I had to question, yeah, how important tradition is for them. Are they really connected to the traditional music, traditional dance of where they come from? It doesn't have to be like the country they were born or what they can be the place where they live. Like how they preserve tradition, how they look at it, how they take care of it.
Mhm.
And also what's the way of them connecting with the audience or whoever, how they connect when they're doing like presenting their art out to the world. I guess something similar to anima. How do they connect? What is important for them? What do they want to leave to anyone who go and
Mm.
sees them? I have like 80 questions and
And you're like, and one more, and we're just like, well, our next co-host will be Misset.
Yes.
That's amazing, and we encourage every guest because we're finally live. We're gonna go see every show live. So if you see another artist in the festival, have that conversation with them.
Yes.
Thank you so much for being with us. As Augusto said, you're such a light, Misa. Like I met you not through art, just through life. I think you work your anima outside. Like you can see when you meet genuine, beautiful, amazing, talented people in this world. And
One.
we truly believe you're like one of the most talented, beautiful people we have met in this country. So
gracias. No, coming. No, I receive it with my heart. Gracias. I'm so grateful for this invitation. I respect you both. No, for me, I'm always learning. I said that I have a long way to go, and being here with you both, it's such a gift. So, muchas gracias, de verdad. Un regalo de la vida. And I hope to see
Gracias
you
a
at the
ti, Miset.
we
show.
will there.
Yes, come to Cacao.
Check out the Rutas Festival from September 22nd to October 9th. For more information, visit alunatheater.ca. Hope to see you there.
We're speaking from Toronto. This is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabe, the Wendat, and Mississaugas of the Credit. This land is covered by the Dishu 1 Spoon Wampum and Treaty 13, also known as the Toronto Purchase.
At Aluna, we remember that people can begin to heal when they are hurt. We are committed to artful participation in disagreements. We are committed to unsettling ourselves towards connection, respect, and justice for all people who now live in this city, which has been a meeting place since time immemorial.
Radio Luna Teatro is supported by Aluna Theatre with support from the Toronto Arts Council, the Ontario Arts Council, the Canada Council for the Arts, the Department of Canadian Heritage, and TD Bank.
Aluna Theater is Beatriz Pisano and Trevor Shelness.
Radio Luna Teatro is produced by Mónica Garrido y Lucía Linares.
For more about Aluna Theater, visit us at alunatheater.ca. Follow at Aluna Theater on Twitter or Instagram, or like us on Facebook.